Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a feeling that I think is, well, I think it's pretty much universal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter if you are religious or spiritual or um, maybe just someone who attends a lot of motivational seminars. And you know this exact feeling.
Right. The crash.
The crash, exactly. It's that moment when you walk out of a really high energy event and your heart is full, you feel seen, you feel powerful, and then you get in your car.
And the bubble just completely bursts.
Immediately. You drive home, you walk into the kitchen, and there it is, the stack of unpaid bills,
Yeah.
the notice from the school about tuition, the empty refrigerator, and suddenly that spiritual high feels about a million miles away from your actual physical reality.
It really does. It is this classic collision between the spiritual and the material worlds.
Right. You go from feeling invincible to feeling broke in about 20 minutes.
And it creates a very specific type of cognitive dissonance for people.
Yeah.
You start asking yourself, well, if I'm so blessed or so helped spiritually, why on earth can't I pay for groceries?
Exactly. And that is the core question we are tackling today. We are looking at a sermon by Bishop Richard Okawawu, and it's titled, How Does God Help Me?
Right.
And look, this isn't just about faith in the abstract sense. The bishop actually lays out a mechanic, almost like an engineering schematic, of how an invisible spirit is supposed to solve tangible physical problems.
That is exactly what makes this source material so interesting to dig into. He doesn't just offer, empty platitudes.
No, he doesn't.
He acknowledges that feeling helped doesn't actually pay the light bill. He wants to explain the process, or what he calls the protocol, of how divine assistance supposedly transfers from the invisible realm right into your bank account.
Yeah, and he starts with a pretty intense reality check. He brings up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you know, the guys in the fiery furnace.
It is a very powerful metaphor to start with.
Because it's easy to talk about help when you are sitting in a comfortable room.
Exactly. But when you are in the fire, when the crisis is active, when the heat is literally on, the question of where is God isn't theoretical anymore.
No, it's a desperate cry.
It is. The bishop starts there because he really wants to validate that the struggle for the listener is real.
And he anchors his whole answer in Psalm 121. I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. Now, I have heard that verse 1,000 times.
Sure, we all wish.
It is usually read as poetry, but the bishop reads it almost like a GPS coordinate.
He really does. He
Yeah.
analyzes the spatial language of the text.
Yeah.
He points out that if you are lifting your eyes to the hills, you are looking away from where you currently are.
Right.
You are looking at a distance.
So if I am standing in the valley of debt, I am looking at the hill of supply.
Precisely. The implication in his framework is that the solution to your problem is not in your hands. It is not in your house, and it is not in your immediate vicinity. The help comes from the Lord, who is by definition a spirit.
But see, that brings us right back to this central problem. God is a spirit, John 4.24. And help is obtained via grace, according to Hebrews 4.16, which is also invisible. But I am flesh and blood, John 3.6. My landlord is definitely flesh and blood, and he wants cash. He does not want spiritual vibes. So how does the invisible actually cross over?
This is where the bishop introduces a concept he calls Ebenezer.
Which I think most people only know from the name Ebenezer Scrooge.
Slightly different context there.
Just a bit.
It actually comes from 1 Samuel 7.1 day, and it translates to stone of help. The bishop uses this term to describe the tangible physical proof of spiritual help.
Okay.
He references the Apostle Paul in Acts 26, who said he obtained help of God and therefore continued.
Continued. I really like that. It's so understated.
It is understated, but it's profound. It means survival. It means you didn't crash. It means the bill actually got paid.
Right.
The bishop argues that until you have that physical proof that Ebenezer in your hand, the transaction isn't complete. So the goal of our deep dive today is to understand his framework for how we get from the invisible prayer to the physical Ebenezer.
And this is where we get into the real meat of the source material, the protocol of the earth. I love this title, by the way. It sounds like a sci-fi thriller.
It does have a cinematic ring to it.
But it is actually a legal argument, isn't it?
It is essentially a jurisdictional argument. He cites Psalm 115, verse 16, which says, even the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth hath he given to the children of men.
Okay, let's unpack that, because that's huge. Is he saying God just gave up ownership of the earth?
Not ownership, no. Management. Think of it like a landlord leasing a property out to a tenant. The landlord absolutely still owns the building, but the tenant has the keys.
They have the right to run the daily operations.
Exactly. The bishop's interpretation is that because God formally gave the earth to humanity, he has established a strict protocol of non-intervention.
Non-intervention. That makes it sound like he is just absent.
No, it just means he respects the lease agreement, he will not violate the rules of the jurisdiction he's set up. And the primary rule of Earth is to operate here, you need a physical
You
body.
need a vessel. So God isn't going to just zap a bag of gold onto my kitchen table out of thin air because that would violate the physics and the legal structure of the earth.
That is his exact point. If God wants to move money, he has to move a human hand to sign a check. If God wants to bring you food, he has to use a human delivery system. He must use a human instrument to execute any spiritual command.
That is a massive constraint to think about, and it leads to the biggest distinction in this entire source, the difference between the source and the agent.
This is the crux of the whole matter. If you are listening and you get nothing else from this deep dive, get this one concept. God is the source. He is the origin, the reservoir.
And humans are the agents.
Humans are the agents. They are the pipes, they are the channels, the delivery trucks, they are the physical manifestation of the help, but not the origin of it.
But we get them confused constantly, don't we?
All the time. The bishop argues that the primary cause of human frustration is that we treat the channel like it is the source.
That makes so much sense when you think about daily life. We suck up to our boss because we think he is the actual source of our salary.
Right.
We stress out and lose sleep over the bank loan officer because we think she is the source of our new house.
Yes. Imagine you order a package from a massive warehouse online, let's say Amazon. When the delivery driver finally shows up at your door, you don't fall to your knees and worship him.
No.
You don't assume he manufactured the product in the back of his van. You know, he is just the last mile of a massive logistics chain.
But in real life, we do worship the driver. We beg the driver. We panic if the driver looks at us the wrong way.
And the bishop says this is a dangerous trap. If you make a human being your source, you are setting yourself up for total heartbreak. Because unlike a predictable delivery truck, human beings are flawed. They are emotional, and they are incredibly unreliable.
He illustrates this with a story from 2 Kings chapter 6, and I have to warn you, this story is grim.
It is one of the darkest moments recorded in Scripture.
It's the famine siege in Samaria. The city is surrounded. People are starving. It is so bad that the text describes 2 women who have literally resorted to cannibalism.
It is horrific, but in the middle of this absolute nightmare, one of the women sees the king walking on the city wall, and she screams up at him, "Help my lord, O king."
Which is a completely logical move, right?
Yeah.
He is the king. He controls the military, the economy, whatever food stores might be left. If anyone can fix a famine, it is the guy in charge.
But the king's response is what the bishop focuses on. The king tears his clothes in grief and says, "If the Lord do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor or out of the winepress?"
Basically saying, if God doesn't help you, how can I help you?
He is admitting his total powerlessness in that moment. He is saying, I have the crown, I have the fancy title, I sit on the throne, but I am just a channel. And if the source hasn't authorized the flow of supply, I have absolutely nothing to give you.
That is such a powerful reality check. The bishop is using this historical account to prove that titles, influence, and political power mean absolutely nothing if there isn't divine backing behind them.
And he takes it a step further, too. He warns that even if people could help you, you can't actually trust that they will. He quotes Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked.
That is the ultimate trust issues verse.
It really is. And he pairs it with Matthew 15:8 about people honoring with their lips while their hearts are far away. It is a valid strategic point he is making.
Yeah, he warns that people are just fickle.
Right. Someone might smile at you today, promise to help you tomorrow, and then completely ghost you the next day.
Yeah.
He says you just don't know the weather of their heart. Relying purely on human goodwill is a massive gamble because human nature is so often selfish or deceptive.
Okay, so let's pause and look at the picture he has painted for us so far. God is invisible and follows these strict earthly protocols. Humans are visible, but they are unreliable, broke, or deceitful. This feels like a total deadlock.
It does.
So how does the help actually arrive then?
This is where the bishop pivots to the solution in his framework. He calls them the override mechanisms.
Override mechanisms. I like that terminology.
Since God is the ultimate source, he claims the right to act as a controller over the operating system of the human agent. To explain this, the bishop quotes Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hands of the Lord, as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will.
Rivers of water. That is an interesting image to use. It's not a steering wheel, it is fluid dynamics.
Exactly. Think about how a river works. A river doesn't choose where it flows. It follows the path of least resistance, or the path that has been deliberately carved out for it.
Right.
The bishop's argument is that God acts as a master hydraulic engineer. He can divert the flow of a human heart without that human even realizing what is happening.
So the human agent doesn't even need to consciously want to help you?
No. In fact, their personal opinion of you is completely irrelevant in this framework. If the source redirects the river, the water flows to your field, period.
The bishop shared a personal anecdote about this that I thought was really funny, but also super relatable. The aggressive neighbor.
Yes, the classic neighbor from hell.
We have all had one. The guy who screams at your kids if their ball rolls an inch onto his lawn. The guy you actively avoid eye contact with when you are taking out the trash. The bishop says this guy was universally disliked in the neighborhood.
Right, he was historically hostile and angry.
Mm.
And then one day the bishop says he is praying for provisions. Specifically, he needed things for his children. And suddenly his daughter gets a phone call. It is the neighbor.
And he's not yelling.
No, he is speaking gently. And he says, I have these brand new school uniforms. I think they would fit your brother. Do you want them?
Wait, so the guy who usually yells at the kids is now clothing them?
That is exactly the bishop's point. That act of sudden kindness wasn't the neighbor's natural personality. It wasn't a permanent change of heart in the sense that he suddenly became a nice person forever.
Right.
It was a turning. God turned the heart temporarily to meet a specific physical material need.
It's almost like the neighbor was a sleeper agent. He was activated for a mission he didn't even understand himself.
Precisely. The bishop argues that the neighbor was compelled to help almost against his own nature. And he gives another great example of this, a text message story.
Oh, yeah, the Sunday afternoon one.
Right. The bishop was in severe financial distress one Sunday afternoon. Suddenly, a pastor friend of his sends him a text saying, God just told me to do XYZ. And he sends over a financial seed that covered the bishop's expenses for 3 solid months.
And the key detail there, the really important part, is that the friend had no idea the bishop was in trouble.
Exactly. The friend wasn't reacting to a sob story or a GoFundMe page. He was reacting to an internal prompt from the source. The source knew the hidden need signaled the agent, and the agent executed the transfer.
The friend didn't even know he was saving the bishop. He just thought he was being obedient to a feeling.
Right. And this really reinforces the core protocol the bishop is teaching. Talk to the source and let the source activate the agents.
Don't go banging on the doors of the agents.
Exactly. It completely removes the need for human manipulation or begging.
Now, there is a nuance here in the sermon that we need to unpack. The bishop makes a very clear distinction between turning the heart, which we just discussed with the neighbor, and opening the heart.
Yes. This is a subtle distinction, but it is incredibly important in his theology.
So what is the difference between turning and opening?
Turning implies redirection. You are pointing the river in a new way. Opening implies granting access. He references Acts 16.14, which is the story of a woman named Lydia. She was a seller of purple.
Which means she was a wealthy businesswoman dealing in high-end luxury goods.
Right, she had resources. And she is sitting there physically listening to the Apostle Paul preach.
She is in the room.
She is physically present.
Yeah.
She hears the audio waves hitting her ears. But the scripture specifically says whose heart the Lord opened, that she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. The bishop argues from this that even though Lydia was there and listening, she couldn't actually respond. She couldn't open her wallet or offer her home until her heart was spiritually opened first.
So the valve essentially had to be released from the inside.
Yes. And the bishop applies this principle to something we all universally hate dealing with: rejection.
Oh, this part really hit home for me. Because usually when we get rejected for a job or a bank loan or a sales pitch, what is our first instinct? We blame ourselves.
Well, do.
We think I need to fix my resume, or I wasn't charming enough in the interview, or my presentation was bad.
And the bishop says stop doing that. It might not be a lack of skill on your part at all. It might simply be that the heart of the helper sitting across the desk from you is currently closed.
So if I am facing a closed door like that, what is the actual strategy?
His strategy is not to bang on the door harder. You don't beg the channel. You go back to the source and you ask him to open the channel's heart. The bishop argues that trying to pry a closed human heart open with human effort through nagging or begging or manipulating is totally futile. But if God opens it, the person will attend to your needs naturally and willingly.
It really flips the script on social anxiety, doesn't it? It takes the pressure right off the interview room and puts it back in the prayer closet.
It suggests that human favor is a spiritual mechanism of the heart, not just the result of a really good sales pitch.
I want to move to the final piece of this framework. We have talked a lot about individual agents, the angry neighbor, the pastor friend Lydia, but the bishop ends the sermon with a much broader view. He talks about an army of helpers.
Yes, he goes to 1 Chronicles 12 for this, looking at King David's rise to power. And here the bishop offers a huge encouragement regarding the actual quality of the help you receive.
He makes a really big deal out of exactly who showed up to help David.
He does, because the people who came to help David weren't just random, unskilled bystanders looking for a handout. The biblical text calls them mighty men of valor and captains.
Why does their specific rank or skill level matter so much in this context?
It matters because of what we might call the pre-equipment principle. The bishop emphasizes that before God sends someone to be your agent of help, he ensures they are already fully equipped with the resources or skills that you lack.
So if I have a massive financial problem, God doesn't send a broke person who is just willing to pray for me. He sends a financier.
Exactly. If you need legal protection,
Mhm.
he sends a lawyer or a warrior. If you need strategic wisdom, he sends a captain. The core insight here is that you receive help you aren't even qualified for because the helper is already qualified.
You are leveraging the qualifications of the agent that the source assigned to your case.
Right. You don't have to be the genius at everything. And notice the consistency mentioned in the text, too. He says they came to help David day by day until it was a great host.
So it wasn't just a one-time charity handout where they drop a check and leave.
No, it was a sustained supply line. The bishop suggests that true, divinely assigned helpers don't just open a door once. They multiply. They bring others with them. They become an entire network of support.
He drops a really fascinating line near the very end of this section. He says, "Every word has a helper."
That is really his closing theological argument. He believes that for every vision, every promise, or every word God gives a person, he has already pre-assigned a specific human helper on earth to manifest it physically.
It makes the world feel like a massive scavenger hunt where the clues are already planted ahead of time.
Or think of it like a video game, where the power-ups are spawned on the map before you even load into the level.
Right. If God gives you a vision to start a business, there's already a specific human being assigned to sign that first big contract. If he gives you a vision for a nonprofit, the major donor is already born, they're already rich, and they're just waiting for the signal to give.
And your job isn't to hunt them down like a stressed-out private detective. Your job is to stay in alignment with the source, so the signal can be sent at the right time.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We have covered a lot of ground today, from ancient kings to aggressive modern neighbors. But there's a very clear algorithm here.
There really is. Let's recap the bishop's protocol of the earth step by step. It goes exactly like this. Step 1 is the need. You have a tangible physical problem, bills, your career.
Right.
Step 2 is the source. You address the invisible God, acknowledging that he is the only true supplier. Step 3 is the authorization. God respects the lease of the earth and decides to use a human agent.
Okay.
Step 4 is the override. God turns or opens the heart of a specific person. It could be a friend, an enemy, or a total stranger. And finally, step 5 is the Ebenezer. That human agent uses their physical resources to meet your need, creating visible proof of invisible help.
It is a complete end-to-end system. But I think the biggest takeaway from the thing that actually changes how you live your life on a Monday morning is the relief of it all.
The relief of misplaced responsibility.
Yes, the bishop just keeps hammering this home. Stop looking at the channels with anxiety.
That is the truly liberating part of this framework. If you really buy into this worldview, you stop fearing your boss. You stop fearing the bank manager. You stop fearing the gatekeepers of your particular industry.
Because they are just faucets.
Exactly. They aren't the water. If one faucet is clogged, the plumber can just walk over and open another one. Or, as we saw with the aggressive neighbor, he can just force the handle on the stuck one.
They are faucets, not the water. I think that needs to be the bumper sticker for this deep dive. It really fundamentally changes the power dynamic of your life. You realize you aren't at the mercy of people. You are in a relationship with the one who manages the people.
It brings a lot of peace to that fire we talked about at the very beginning of the show. You can look at the flames and say, my help isn't actually coming from the fireman. It is coming from the one who controls the elements.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. And it is a bit of a mind bender, based on that aggressive neighbor story.
Let's hear it.
The bishop showed us that God can make even your enemies be at peace with you to serve you. So think about the person in your life right now who is your biggest headache, the villain in your current movie, the person actively blocking your promotion, the difficult neighbor, the stubborn bureaucrat.
The exact person you were probably complaining about to your friends right now.
Right. What if that person isn't actually your enemy? What if they are actually a sleeping agent of help who just hasn't had their heart turned yet? What if the very person standing in your way is actually the vessel loaded with the cargo you need and they are just waiting for the signal from the source?
That certainly changes the way you would pray for them, doesn't it? Instead of praying for their removal or their downfall,
Yeah,
you might actually start praying for their turning.
exactly. You don't need them gone. You just need their valve opened. Something to think about the next time you run into a brick wall in human form.
That's it for this deep dive into the protocol of the Earth. Thanks for exploring this with us.
See you next time.